that's the thing. So you're saying that every relationship has this newness in the beginning. Like it is a thing in the beginning for all I mean, if it's not, then you got like, why?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But it doesn't have to go away.
Right.
And that's the thing is right. Because most people would say that no, you can think that it doesn't have to go away, but it does have to go away because it will go away and there's nothing you can do to prevent it. I think that would be, if we polled the audience, I think 80% of the audience would say that it has to go away and there's nothing you can do about it.
But I would say, why does it have to go away?
So because
in my mind,
that's what we should talk about.
Does it have to go away because you can't live on your honeymoon for the rest of your life? And maybe that's why they call it the honeymoon phase. I don't know.
Well, what does it look like to not go away? I suppose that's maybe that we could answer that question.
Yeah, I think you have like what I would describe as the honeymoon phase, that newness. And then like with us, because that's the only way I can kind of explain it, is that like the more you go through things, like hard things, or the more you like dive into who somebody is, you end up loving them more for those things. Right. And you end up like working through things that you maybe wouldn't even have been able to work through with other people. And so it brings you closer rather than, separating that like honeymoon part of the beginning of the relationship. And also by like going on dates, like continuing to like romance each other, keeps that going. And I think just like genuinely caring and having love and respect for the person that you're with, even amongst some of the like more, turbulent times, can cause you to still have this high that a honeymoon phase would give you, and you're not going down. Because even like when you're in a hard spot, you're not like going backwards or going down from this level of like love and honeymoon euphoria. And once you're actually through that part, you actually get stronger and you go up. Like I would say that you go from honeymoon phase to like whatever this higher level is. So yeah. Which I don't know what it's called, but
I would almost say, even though that I agree with that, but I would say also that the honeymoon phase, like the euphoria of the honeymoon phase, doesn't even really have to wear off either, right? So I would use like, for example, our relationship as an example. The only example that we have, the better than perfect example, is that we still pretty much want to spend all our time together.
Yeah, which was not normal. Like, I just want everybody to know that, like, that wasn't normal for me, and I don't think for you either. But no. I mean, when John and I first, like, moved in together and my mom came over, she was like, "You're sitting next to him on the couch? Like, what are you doing?" And that is a very real thing. Like, I didn't want to even sit next to the person I liked.
So that's definitely not the norm, but it shows for you,
that like,
the difference.
I just had this like different experience with you. I wanted to like show you affection and be around you, and like you said, like even to this day, I would say if we fit into the conventional honeymoon phase, we wouldn't want to be around each other as much as we still do, because we have spent basically every day together since we met, and we continue to do that. And
continue to want to do that, where it's like, when we have the time alone, like we want to be together. I think most people are like, oh, well, I need some time away, or like, I want to get away. I want to get some time to myself.
But you don't realize you get that in other like ways, like when you're doing your hobby, or when you're at work, or when you're like running an errand, like those are your you times. Or like at night, you can be like, hey, I'm going to go to bed a little bit earlier. Like you can still have your you time.
Right. But you're not seeking it out, I guess is what I'm saying. It's like you're not seeking to get away.
It's not like you value the time with your partner almost to the same level, or maybe even weirdly a little bit more than your you time that you did. I'm not saying that you don't need it, but I'm just saying that like some people, their relationship has gone to this like just maintenance level. Right. And so they kind of either don't feel like they need or can rely on that connection in some sort of way. So they spend more time alone because that's what they can rely on. That's what's constant. That's what they can predict. But I think that's a whole, maybe another like segment of this larger idea that we're talking about. But yeah, it's it's a pretty complicated yet simple thing. But it's complicated because people expect it the way that you're saying. A lot of people do. They're like, it's a honeymoon phase, and then you face reality. They call it reality.
Right.
But it's like, I don't feel like we're not living a reality. Like, yes, it's like an ideal version, I think, and you think, and some would say, but it's a reality, but people just maybe don't feel like they can obtain that.
Yeah. I would classify it as saying you actually want to be, you still are excited to see the person, right? That you want to spend all your time with them, that you don't get sick of each other, right? Even if you're together all the time on a trip or something like that. Going on a trip is a good example, right?
That's a good way to test your relationship.
Also, that you don't snip at each other, get snippy, right? Almost, any relationship I've ever been in, I've been snippy, or someone, or you know what I mean. You're snippy. We're never snippy. We never are snapping at each other or getting irritated with each other.
Yeah.
Really. So,
but I think that too is like having a really high respect for the person you're with, and like really knowing them.
Right.
Because it's like, I know that it would hurt you if I snipped at you. And I've snipped at people. I've snipped at plenty of people.
For sure. I have too. Yeah.
So it's like, I know that it's within me.
Right.
But that side of me is never like brought up, even when we have like difficult conversations or anything like that. Because it's like, I don't want to hurt you just because I'm upset. I'd rather like us talk about it, like actually communicate. And maybe that's too because we are two people who value communication and really know how important it is to get through things and work through things and, process all of that.
Yeah.
And some people don't necessarily have that. Because I can see where women maybe get snippy from like a women's perspective, because sometimes guys don't want to listen and they don't, know how to listen even. And so it can be really frustrating and they feel like there's nothing they can really do. And I'm not saying that like it's okay to be snippy, but I'm just saying I can see where it like comes from. It's like the frustration of like trying to have that communication and then being like shut down. And then it's almost like a child having a temper tantrum type of thing because they feel out of control. They can't do anything sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. But I guess it's like, what it comes down to is what I'm trying to say is that you can carry over those things, right? From the honeymoon phase, because in the honeymoon phase, the quote honeymoon phase, you're not getting snippy at each other, right?
Exactly. You're showing on your best behavior,
right? But the relationship can still be like that. Right. It is somewhat different in the sense that it's not the newness of it, but all of the other qualities of the relationship still can carry over, and you can get there. So maybe it's worth talking about how, because I don't think most people have experienced this, right? Because I don't know, you probably haven't experienced this in the past. I haven't experienced this in the past, right? So how does someone get there? And we've been together for 3 years. So not like decades, not a super long time, but certainly long enough where, and also I'll qualify it this way too, to say that we've been together for 3 years, but in that time we've spent pretty much
every day together.
Yes, because literally I work from home and you're at home, and then every night we are together all the time. We're spending all our time together. So
and we always eat together and all that kind of
stuff. So even though we've only, relatively short time, 3 years, we've been together we spent more time together than most people who have been together for 10 years have spent
together. It feels
together.
like a really long time in a good way.
Right, in a good way. And that's what I'm saying is, so what makes this different? How have we escaped the honeymoon phase, like of having it fade away?
Yeah. I mean, that's really hard, but I think it's some of the key components we already kind of talked about.
What have you done differently?
See, it's like, I don't feel like I've done anything intentionally different. I just feel like who I am and the partner that I felt like was ideal for me.
Right.
Like, and how they would mesh is what we are. Does that make sense? And so like, that's why I'm telling you, I'm like, I have snipped at people before, and I have had honeymoon phases that die out. So I did believe all those things, right?
Right.
But it's like, I've always been a person who's tried to like better myself and like work on myself, because I feel like everybody in the whole world is always working on something, and we will be for the rest of eternity. But it was really hard finding somebody who kind of felt the same way. And so when I was with people that maybe didn't have the same kind of values, I felt kind of like stuck, right? Like I felt like I hit a wall. But like you said, like in the honeymoon phase, you don't really know that about them yet, right? So you're having fun, you're going on dates, you're like just enjoying each other, and you're enjoying the good parts that they're showing you. And, you know, you haven't really run into anything messy yet. But then when you get to that part and you run into something that's maybe like a deal breaker, or like goes against what you would necessarily like morally do, or something like that, you know, like something where it feels like it doesn't align. It can be like a bunch of different things.
Right.
But maybe it's not as severe as like you don't want to necessarily break up with this person over it. So you try to like push through, and then you get into this like I call it the maintenance, you know, like you're just doing the things to like cohabitate and like still be together, but it's lost the like, I don't want to say joy. That makes it sound bad, but it's like, because there are good moments, like don't get me wrong, but it's lost that like, I want to be with you all the time and like go on the dates. Cause now you're like, you run into this thing and you're like, oh, actually, well, maybe, you know, maybe I do want to like go do this by myself. And then that leads to more and more kind of like living separate lives, but together, which is what I feel like is actually happening when people say their honeymoon phase is gone.
Okay. Let me give you my analysis of it and see if you agree with it then. Okay. Why does it occur? I would say that is that the natural state is for the honeymoon phase to not ever go away. It's unnatural for it to fade away, even though that's a majority of the time. But the way that it happens is through one word, which is bitterness. It's grudges. I think what happens is that, and that's why people get snippy and irritated, is that what happens is that people let a little bit of it into the relationship, right? So if I start to dislike you in some way, like something about you irritates me, and I don't address that. I mean, even if I just to let it irritate me, like there's something going on. But let's say that issues are not addressed.
Right.
And so I start to get bitter against you for this thing, right? And then now that thing starts to irritate me. And now every time I see you and you do this thing, I have this little irritation. So now I'm, you know, doing something in the kitchen and you come in and you say something and I'm like, stop bothering me. I'm like, or, you know, whatever I snap, I was like, you go check it yourself. Go just look in the closet, whatever it is. You know, go look for yourself. Like, why you got to bug me when I'm busy? Can't you see I'm busy right now? You know, any of those are the snippy things that we haven't said to each other. Right. So I think then that happens. And then that causes a hurt on the other person's side. And then that doesn't get resolved. So then they have bitterness. They don't talk
about it.
And so you get that feedback loop where you're hurting each other unconsciously, right? But bitterness is building up on both sides, so you're causing that separation to occur over time, and that's what happens is that you no longer have that. You know, when I look at you, when I think about you as a person, I have nothing that I dislike. I have no animosity towards you. Which I think that's hard
for people to say.
Right. I have no animosity towards you. Right. I'm not to say that you're perfect and nothing you have done has ever been something that I've taken offense or had an issue with. Right. But all of those things we've addressed to a point where I don't have them, and they never built up. I guess that's how I could put it, is that they've never built up. And I feel like it's probably
inspired me yet again with a little tidbit. Because I like what you were saying, it really like sparked something in me, because we were talking about how, you know, I've never like not snipped at somebody before. But I also, and I've told you this, I've never like really liked somebody for who they are.
Right.
That sounds so horrible, but I'm going to be the one telling the actual truth so that people understand that they can like reflect and be like, oh, well, that might be what's happening here too, because that is a big deal. Like, and I think that back then I thought I was liking somebody for who they really are, but there were still little things that kind of bothered me that, you know, I was just like, okay, well, everybody like nobody's perfect. So like maybe this isn't a big deal. And it's not that you don't have things that like, that you do that I'm like, I wouldn't do that, or, you know, necessarily things like that you do. But it's like, despite those things, I still love you for who you really are. Like the good things you do, the questionable things you do, like all those things.
Questionable things.
You don't do a lot of those
like cutting,
things.
like cutting my hair. I don't know,
maybe a little questionable, but
I didn't cut it myself.
Like that's good. Well, that would have been interesting, but yeah. So I think like that is when I was really like, oh, I have never really liked somebody for who they are at their core. And even in the very beginning, I knew I liked you for who you were.
Right.
But I really figured that out when like we faced certain things, right? Because it's like you do have that honeymoon phase. Like everybody does no matter what, but it's like loving somebody for who they are to their core is what keeps that honeymoon phase and what gets you through anything in life.
Right.
And keeps you on that level of honeymoon or beyond that.
But it's also a choice that you make.
Right, it is.
Like you choose to love someone to their core, but you have to choose the right person where you're like, now I'll do
because it is harder to do that when like who you are inside is like resisting that.
Exactly.
Like it's really bothering you about these things. So yes, you can like, it is a choice. It's always a choice. But I will say that like, it was an easy choice. Yeah, exactly. It was an easy choice. It becomes an easy choice with you.
Yeah.
For many reasons. So I think that it's like, I'm not saying that if you're in a relationship that you had the honeymoon phase and now it's like mellowed out, that like it can't be fixed.
Right.
But I think if you are single and like looking for somebody, then you really need to be like really invested in doing that and like really serious and like really trying to find somebody that aligns on things in your life. That because it does help that me and you value communication and we want to grow and those sort of things. Like I don't think I could have been with somebody, no matter who they were, that like didn't care about personal development or communicating.
Yeah, exactly.
Because 100%. I was so in that zone that it would have been set up for failure. And I'm sure you can relate to that too. Right. But you know, so there were other things that I think have to align. And that's what I'm saying. Like certain things like that do have to be in alignment or, you know, something that you guys are working towards. Like, I don't think you have to be perfectly healed to find your person. Cause I think you can heal a lot of things with your right person because I've gone through a lot of things with you in our 3 years that we've been together. And I'm very grateful for that. But
and that's why we call it better than perfect as well, right? Is because it isn't like some people go through the honeymoon phase and that's perfect. Right. And then they drop off
and then
into worse than perfect.
Bad,
And then they're like, it's not perfect anymore. In fact, that's what people think that the end of the honeymoon phase is it's perfect. Right. And now that illusion of perfection is shattered. And now they're like, oh, okay, this is the reality.
Right.
In our case, we still had the illusion of the perfection. We noticed that, you know, obviously you can't uphold the illusion of perfection. Right. But then we moved to a better than perfect because we didn't build up the grudges against each other. We actually, in a way, improved the quality of the relationship. It's a different, it's like before the honeymoon phase, like if you're going to call it in our relationship, is a blind sort of love. Right. Better than